Today I'll tell you a story so tender it hurts, set in the golden valleys of the Old West, where rivers sang and danger slept beneath every shadow. This was a land where hearts and rifles were both quick to break. It all began with one young woman stepping into sacred water, never knowing that one small choice would bind her soul to a warrior the world had sworn to destroy. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Territory of New Mexico, 1873. Santa Fe Creek spilled over time-worn rock in a hushed, silvered rush that swallowed every other sound in the high country. Seraphine Holt slid down from her saddle, boots settling on damp moss beneath the pines. At 18, the daughter of Colton Holt, commander of Fort Union, had slipped past the iron grip of military life once more. Her honey-gold hair, usually pinned tight in proper fashion, fell loose down her back, catching flecks of sunlight that filtered through the branches. "Just a little while," she murmured to her mare, tying the reins to a low limb. "Father won't even notice I'm gone." Seraphine had learned the art of vanishing between duties. Colton Holt would be buried in reports until dusk, and her missing place at the officer's tea would be covered by a convenient headache, courtesy of her devoted maid, Mara Quinn. Cool mountain air, scented with pine and wild blooms, guided her toward the hidden basin below the falls. In the shadow of the Sangre de Cristo range, she tasted the freedom she craved, far from schedules, etiquette, and the constant eyes that came with being the colonel's daughter. She slipped behind the curtain of falling water into a narrow grotto she'd discovered months before. It was her private refuge, the one corner of the world that asked nothing of her. Seraphine laid out her riding dress beside her boots and stepped into the clear pool in her underthings. The chill sent a bright shiver through her. She dove, letting the current scour away the weight of propriety. When she surfaced, laughing and breathless, the feeling of being watched crept over her skin. Her laughter stilled. On the bank, among the pines, stood a tall, copper-skinned man with eyes as deep and unreadable as night. Buckskin leggings hugged his frame, and a knife rested at his hip. His bare chest was marked only by a medicine pouch on a leather cord. Long black hair, threaded with a single eagle feather, framed the face of a warrior of the Ash River clan. Seraphine's pulse thundered. She ought to scream, run, hide. Every lesson her father ever drilled into her said so. Yet she stayed rooted, caught by the stranger's steady gaze. "This water is sacred," he said in clear, lightly accented English. "You bathe where the spirits of my ancestors dwell." Seraphine swallowed, finding her voice. "I didn't know. I'll leave." She moved toward the bank until he lifted a hand. "You are not afraid," he noted, head tilting. "Should I be?" Seraphine shot back, surprising even herself. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Most white women would cry out at the sight of a warrior. "I'm not most white women," Seraphine said, lifting her chin. Water slid from her hair down her shoulders, and she felt suddenly exposed. Yet his eyes never left her face. "No," he agreed. "You are not." He stepped back. "I will go." "Wait," Seraphine called, unsure why she wanted him to stay. "What's your name?" He studied her with those dark, searching eyes. "I am Veyrek." "I'm Seraphine Holt." "Holt," he repeated, something shifting in his expression. "Daughter of Colton Holt." She hesitated, then nodded. Veyrek's jaw tightened. "Your father hunts my people, calls us beasts." "I'm not my father," Seraphine said firmly. "I don't believe what he says about the Apache." "And what do you believe, Seraphine Holt?" The way he spoke her name sent a strange tremor through her. I believe people should be judged by what they do, not by what they're called. Veyrek considered that, then reached into a small pouch at his belt and held out a closed fist. Come, take. She stepped closer. He opened his palm to reveal a smooth, deep turquoise stone. Protection, he said as she took it, from the water spirits. Their fingers brushed, and a spark raced up her arm. Thank you, she whispered. Veyrek nodded and turned away. Will I see you again? The question slipped out before she could stop it. He paused, glancing back. If the spirits will it, then he vanished into the trees as quietly as he'd come. Seraphine stood in the pool, clutching the stone, her heart tangled with fear, wonder, and something she couldn't name. She knew she should tell her father. An Apache warrior so near Fort Union would be vital news. But as she dressed and rode back, she kept the secret. The turquoise felt warm in her pocket, a small, steady weight that made her feel lighter and strangely whole. The next afternoon found Seraphine riding back toward the falls, telling herself she only wanted the quiet. Yet her eyes kept searching the timberline for him. The next day, Seraphine rode out again, heart pulled like a magnet to that hidden waterfall. She told herself it was just for the peace, for the hush of the trees and the rush of falling water. But truth was, she was hoping for a glimpse of the warrior whose gaze had haunted her since their meeting. She was halfway along the trail when a twig snapped behind her. She turned in the saddle. Veyrek walked beside her horse, silent as a shadow. You came back, he said. As did you, Seraphine replied, pulling her mare to a stop. These mountains belong to my people, Veyrek said. Your kind claim them with ink on paper, but the earth knows her true children. Seraphine dismounted slowly, facing him. Now, in full daylight, she saw things she'd missed before. The scar from his temple to jaw, the intricate beadwork on his medicine pouch, the sharp awareness in his eyes. Why aren't you with your tribe? She asked. I scout, he said. Watch the movement of the Black Spur cavalry. His gaze flicked to her. Watch the colonel's daughter ride where she should not. A flush crept up her neck. Are you planning to take me prisoner? His face gave nothing away, but there was a glint of amusement in his eyes. What use would I have for the daughter of Colton Holt? Your father would bring soldiers. Many would die. Then why speak to me at all? You are different, he said after a moment. You look at the world with eyes that see beyond skin. That is rare. They walked side by side beneath the trees, leading her mare through sun-dappled underbrush. Veyrek pointed out plants. What healed, what fed, what poisoned. He showed her berries safe to eat, bark that broke fevers, leaves that closed wounds. Seraphine listened with rapt attention. His voice was low and sure, like a man who didn't speak unless it mattered. At the falls, he taught her how to move quiet as wind, how to read tracks, how to find north without a compass. In return, Seraphine told him about the books she snuck from her father's library, stories of wild women and distant lands, of dreams that didn't fit inside parlor walls. When the sky began to burn orange, she sighed. I should head back. If I'm gone too long, my father will send the whole cavalry. Veyrek gave a nod. Tomorrow? The word hung between them, heavy with what neither dared speak. Tomorrow, she answered. On the third day, Seraphine returned. Veyrek was waiting. A small fire burned in the hollow, and beside it lay a skinned rabbit, ready to cook. I'll show you how we eat, he said simply. That afternoon, he taught her to prepare food the Ash River way, to find flavor in wild herbs, to bury coals just right. She learned how not to leave a trail behind her. They shared the meal by firelight. Seraphine opened up, About her mother, Lydia, lost when she was just 12. About her hatred of suffocating tea parties and expectations. About the dread of being married off to a man like Rhett Ashcroft and disappearing behind someone else's name. Veyrek listened with the patience of the mountains. Then he spoke of his own life, training as a warrior, the sacred dances, the elders who passed down their stories, and the white settlers who kept pushing, taking, lying. "My father says your people raid homes and kill innocents," she said quietly. "Some do," he admitted, "just like some of your soldiers slaughter my people. War turns men into monsters, on both sides." When night fell, neither stood. Something had shifted, something quiet and powerful. "I should go," she said, but her body didn't move. "Night holds danger," Veyrek said. "Stay until morning." Seraphine knew what she was choosing, but here in the hush of trees, before a man who saw her, not the colonel's daughter, not a prize to be won, she didn't hesitate. "I'll stay," she whispered. Under a sky full of stars, something wild and beautiful unfolded. Their touches started soft, then grew hungry. He was gentle but untamed. His hands learned the shape of her, not as a man claims, but as if she were something sacred. "This changes everything," he murmured. "I don't want it to stay the same," she breathed, pulling him closer. They loved each other on a bed of pine needles, with moonlight casting silver ribbons over their bare skin. The sound of the waterfall became their only witness. For Seraphine, it was a kind of salvation, freedom from roles, from duty, from fear. In Veyrek's arms, she found the woman she had only ever dreamed of being. Later, wrapped in his blanket, he traced her shoulder with his fingers. "My people say when two souls are meant to meet, the stars burn brighter." She looked up. "They do tonight." He reached for the turquoise stone, now hanging on a cord around her neck. "This stone carries the memory of rivers long dry, of those who've crossed into spirit. Now it will carry this night." She turned to him. "Come back with me. Talk to my father." His face hardened. "He would hang me without a word." "Then I'll come with you," she said without thinking. "To your people." "They wouldn't accept you, not now. War's comin', Seraphine Holt." Veyrek's voice was low, a warning carried on the wind. "Your father leads the men who'll march against mine," he continued. "There's no peace left here." Seraphine reached for him, fear tightening around her chest. "Then what do we do?" Veyrek gently cradled her face in his hands. "I have to go," he said, his thumb brushing her cheek. "My chief needs word of what I've seen, where the Black Spur cavalry moves, how they strike." Her breath caught. "When will I see you again?" He didn't answer at first. Then, with a voice firm as stone, he said, "I cannot promise when. But hear me now, I swear this. One day I'll come back for you." His eyes burned with something fierce and eternal. "If you still want me then, I'll take you away from all this, to a place where nobody cares if you're Apache or white, just man and woman." "I'll wait," Seraphine whispered, tears falling unchecked. "No matter how long it takes." As dawn spilled over the ridge, she dressed in silence, readying herself for the ride back to Fort Union. Veyrek stood a short distance away, his face once more the unreadable mask of a warrior. He stepped closer and pressed something into her hand. "Keep this stone close," he murmured. "When the moon is full, hold it. Think of me. I'll feel your thoughts, no matter how far." Seraphine nodded, unable to speak past the ache in her throat. Veyrek leaned in, kissed her with a fire that branded itself into her soul, then turned and disappeared into the pines, vanishing like smoke on the wind. She climbed into the saddle, her skin still tingling from his touch, her heart already hollow with his absence. As she rode toward the fort, a knowing settled deep in her bones. Nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Territory of New Mexico, 1878. The sun blazed down on the Holt Ranch, turning the yard into a sweltering furnace. Seraphine wiped the sweat from her brow and gave a sharp nod to the ranch hands loading sacks of grain onto the wagon. At 23, she had become the kind of woman men underestimated, until they watched her run a ranch better than most cowboys. The land, inherited from her uncle Elias Holt, had flourished under her firm, capable hand. "Miss Holt," called Thomas Reyes, one of her most trusted ranchers. "Where you want these seed sacks stored?" "North shed," Seraphine answered without hesitation. "And make sure they're off the floor. We had mice last year, remember?" Thomas tipped his hat and hollered for the boys to follow. She watched them work, arms crossed, eyes sharp. The Holt Ranch had more than survived. It had thrived. Her herd had doubled. Her crops came up strong every year, and her horses were getting talked about in towns as far as Santa Rosa. What started as a way to escape her father's control had turned into her purpose. "Mail's here, Miss Holt," said Mara Quinn, the older woman who'd left Fort Union alongside Seraphine and now served as her housekeeper and steady companion. "And another one from your father," she added, handing her a small stack of letters. Seraphine sighed. She didn't need to look at the handwriting. She'd know Colton Holt's stiff script anywhere. She tucked the letters into her pocket, planning to read them later. Her relationship with the colonel had grown colder over the years, especially after she refused every suitor he sent her way, Red Ashcroft included, his Golden Boy cavalry captain. "Oh, and Captain Ashcroft sent word," Mara added cautiously. "He'll be stopping by this afternoon. Says it's official business." Seraphine's jaw tightened. "I'm sure it is." Inside the cool adobe walls of the main house, she washed the dust off her hands and sat at her writing desk. Unfolding her father's letter confirmed what she expected. A lecture. Another plea to quit her wild independence. Another reminder that marriage was her only path to protection and purpose. And once again, a firm push toward Captain Ashcroft. "Captain Reynolds has expressed his continued interest in your hand despite your refusals," the colonel had written. "He is an officer of promise and would offer the stability you so clearly require. I've given him my blessing to call again, and I expect you to receive him accordingly." Seraphine folded the letter with practiced calm and slipped it into a drawer full of nearly identical messages. Her father didn't understand. She'd give up her freedom for no man, not unless it was Veyrek, the warrior who had vanished into the mountains 5 years ago. The turquoise stone still lay against her chest, warm beneath her simple work dress. Every full moon, she held it tight and whispered his name, hoping he'd feel it somehow, wherever he was. But as the Apache wars dragged on, each newspaper brought dread. Another raid, another retaliation. Every name she read made her stomach twist, every unnamed casualty a fresh stab of fear. A knock broke her thoughts. Mara stepped into the room, looking apologetic. "Captain's here." Seraphine drew a steady breath, stood tall, and smoothed her dress. "Show him in." Red Ashcroft entered with the practiced confidence of a man who wore command like a second skin. At 32, he still cut a striking figure in his polished cavalry blues, face weathered, posture straight as a blade. "Miss Holt," he greeted, removing his hat with a courtly dip. "You're looking well." "Captain Ashcroft," Seraphine Holt said coolly, "what brings you to my ranch today?" Ashcroft glanced toward Mara Quinn, who lingered in the doorway. "Would it be possible to speak in private?" Seraphine gave Mara a small nod. With a reluctant look, the older woman stepped out and pulled the door closed behind her. Once alone, Ashcroft's stiff military formality eased just slightly. Seraphine, your father's worried. We all are. I'm perfectly capable of managing my life and my land, Captain. That's not in question, Ashcroft said, pacing slowly across the room. You've done more with this ranch than anyone ever expected. But you're isolated out here. Vulnerable. Apache movements picked up in the region. Her heart skipped. Has there been trouble nearby? 3 homesteads burned last month, just 20 miles north, and there are rumors. He hesitated. What kind of rumors? Ashcroft exhaled slowly. Intel suggests that the Red Mesa Riders are active in this territory. They're under the command of a particularly dangerous fighter. Calls himself Veyrek, known for bold raids, mostly military targets. Seraphine felt her spine go rigid. That name had haunted newsprint and whispers for years. Daring raids, vanished patrols, and behind them, him. And what does that have to do with me? Ashcroft met her eyes. 3 years ago, your father led the campaign against Veyrek's people. If word spreads that his daughter lives alone out here, well, it wouldn't take much to make you a target. Seraphine squared her shoulders. I appreciate the warning, Captain, but I've got a loyal crew, smart dogs, and I shoot straighter than half your men. Ashcroft stepped closer. Be reasonable. This isn't just about safety. Your father isn't getting any younger. His greatest wish is to see you, settled, before he steps down. Settled, Seraphine echoed dryly. You mean married? To you? Would that be so awful? He asked gently. I've admired you for years, Seraphine. You'd have your freedom to run this ranch. I wouldn't stand in your way. I'd never try to change you. She paused. For a moment, part of her wanted to consider it. Red Ashcroft wasn't cruel. He was honorable, respected, never condescending. Maybe after 5 long years holding on to a ghost, it was time to stop waiting. But the turquoise stone beneath her blouse felt warm against her chest, a silent echo of a promise made beneath a mountain moon. I'm sorry, William, she said softly. My answer hasn't changed. His jaw tensed, but he nodded. Your father suspected as much. He asked me to give you this. Ashcroft pulled a letter from his coat and placed it on the desk. If you won't consider my offer, he insists you return to Fort Union, where he can ensure your protection. Seraphine's temper flared. I'm not a child to be dragged around by orders. This land is mine. I built it from dust, and I won't abandon it because my father's decided I'm too fragile. This isn't just protectiveness, Ashcroft said. There's real danger. Not every Apache is a killer, no matter what my father preaches, she snapped. Ashcroft tilted his head, studying her. You've always had unusual sympathies toward them. Some might find that troubling, considering the state of things. She caught herself. Too much truth had slipped out. I believe in judging people for who they are, not where they're from. That shouldn't be controversial. Maybe not, he admitted, but these are dangerous times for high ideals. He retrieved his hat. Think on it. You've got till the end of the month. Say yes, or come back to Fort Union. After that, your father will send soldiers to escort you back. He wouldn't dare, Seraphine said, low. He would. He believes it's for your own good. Ashcroft paused at the door. For what it's worth, I hope you choose me. You'd still have a measure of freedom with me, more than you'd get otherwise. When he was gone, Seraphine paced the floor, fury coiling in her chest. Her father's ultimatum hung over her like a noose. Marry a man she didn't love, crawl back to Fort Union, or be dragged there in chains. That night, under a sky full of silver light, she stepped out onto the porch. The moon was nearly full. The land shimmered in its glow. She clutched the turquoise stone at her chest, closing her eyes. "Where are you, Veyrek?" she whispered. "You said you'd return." The wind gave no answer, only the distant howl of a coyote and the rustle of cottonwoods in the dark. 3 days later, a summer storm rolled over the Holt ranch like a beast with thunder in its belly. Lightning flashed across the high desert sky as Seraphine made her final rounds, double-checking every latch, every gate, every fence line. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets as she ran for the porch, her hair soaked, her heart still pounding from the wind. She'd just reached the steps when the dogs let loose a vicious bark, low and sharp, not the kind that warned of coyotes or cattle straying. This was different, aggressive, protective. Someone was out there. Her hand flew to the pistol holstered at her waist. Thomas Reyes and the rest of the Holt ranch crew had already left for the night. Only Mara Quinn remained with her on the property. "Mara," she called, stepping inside and grabbing the rifle by the door. "You see anything out there?" Seraphine grabbed the shotgun from her bedroom. "Bring it here," she told Mara Quinn, who rushed to obey as Seraphine peered out the window, eyes scanning the rain-soaked yard for movement. Lightning lit up the night for a heartbeat, and that's when she saw him. A tall figure stood by the corral, motionless, wind tugging at what looked like buckskins. His long hair whipped like dark silk in the storm. Darkness swallowed him again. "Your shotgun, Miss Holt," Mara said, voice shaking. "Should I load it?" "It's already loaded," Seraphine answered, eyes still locked on the spot where the figure had stood. "Stay inside. Lock the door behind me." "You're going out in that storm?" Mara gasped. "Lock the door," Seraphine repeated, calm and steady. She took the shotgun and stepped out onto the porch. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, fire 3 shots into the air. That'll bring Thomas Reyes running from his cabin." Before Mara could say another word, Seraphine disappeared into the downpour. The rain fell hard now, a thick curtain of water blurring the world to just a few yards. The dogs near the barn barked like mad, straining against their chains. Something was out there. Seraphine stepped off the porch, shotgun ready. "Who's out there?" she called out. "This is private land." Lightning struck again, and the figure was closer now, right at the edge of the yard. Seraphine raised the barrel, finger just beside the trigger. "Stop right there and tell me who you are!" Then the wind shifted, carrying a voice she hadn't heard in 5 long years. Seraphine Holt. It wasn't a question. It was a name spoken like a vow, deep, accented, unforgettable. Her hands trembled, her breath hitched. "Veyrek?" she whispered. Then louder, heart pounding. "Veyrek, is that you?" Another flash of lightning lit him fully. He was broader than she remembered, his frame solid and scarred. His face had hardened, a few new lines and cuts, but his eyes hadn't changed. Fierce, piercing, staring straight into her, the shotgun slipped from her grip. In 3 long strides, he closed the space between them. They stood in the open rain, 5 years crashing into one stormy moment. "You came back," she whispered, barely able to speak. "I promised," Veyrek said, voice rough like worn leather. He lifted a hand, fingers gently brushing over the turquoise stone hidden beneath her soaked dress. "You kept it," she murmured. Then her strength gave out, and she threw herself against him. His arms crushed her close, as if afraid she might vanish if he let go. The storm roared around them, but neither moved, neither cared. They clung to each other like the world might end if they let go. "I came to fulfill my vow," Veyrek said at last. "If you still want me." Seraphine pulled back just enough to see his face. "I've waited 5 years. I never stopped waiting." His gaze bore into hers. "The world hasn't changed. Your father still hunts my people. My people still fight yours. We'd be outlaws on both sides. I don't care, she said fiercely. We'll run. Disappear. Just like you promised me back then. A voice broke the moment. Miss Holt! Mara Quinn stood on the porch, lantern in one hand, her other reaching for the pistol at her hip. Her face went pale at the sight of the Apache warrior holding Seraphine. Step away from him! No, Mara! Seraphine shouted, moving in front of Veyrek. He's not a threat. He's my friend. Mara's jaw dropped, stunned. Her hand slowly fell from the gun. Come inside, Seraphine said gently, taking Veyrek's hand. You're soaked. We've got a lot to talk about. Veyrek hesitated, his eyes darting from Seraphine to the nervous housekeeper. Then, wordlessly, he nodded. Mara backed away as Seraphine led him through the door, into the warmth of the kitchen. Water dripped from his hair and shoulders onto the floorboards. Mara stared, wide-eyed. Miss Holt, she whispered, he's Apache. Yes, he is, Seraphine replied, voice steady even as her heart raced. And he's my guest. Now please, she added, bring some towels and something hot to eat. Mara didn't move. She just stared at Veyrek. Does your father know about this? Seraphine's voice turned cold. My father doesn't decide who I welcome into my home. Now, please, the towels. With clear reluctance, Mara turned and walked out, glancing over her shoulder. Once alone, Seraphine looked back at Veyrek. Suddenly, all her boldness drained. You look just like I remembered, she said softly. Veyrek's eyes scanned the room, the polished furniture, copper pots on the wall, the warm glow of oil lamps. His expression was unreadable. You've become quite the woman, Veyrek said quietly, his voice low and proud. A leader among your folk. Seraphine smiled faintly at the thought. Hardly that, but I've carved out something of my own here. She stepped in closer, her fingers reaching up to brush his face, tracing the fresh scar along his jawline. You've seen war. He caught her hand in his, pressing it gently to his cheek. Plenty of it. Too much. His gaze darkened. 3 summers passed. Your father's soldiers raided our camp. Half my band died. Women, children. Only I made it out. Her heart ached at the revelation. I didn't know, Veyrek. I swear it. Why would you? He said bitterly. No one prints Apache grief in the papers. Only Apache raids. Still, his hand was tender as it cupped her cheek. After that slaughter, I took a new name. Broken Knife. I've led warriors since, against the same soldiers who burned our world down. Seraphine felt her breath catch. Broken Knife. You're the one Captain Ashcroft came warning me about. Veyrek nodded, watching her eyes. That name frightens you. He said your band's been seen nearby, she whispered, piecing it all together. He also said, my father was the one who led the attack on your winter camp. He did. Veyrek's voice grew hard. Said we'd broken treaty by hunting where we shouldn't. But we were starving. The agent stole the rations promised to us. A sick feeling twisted in Seraphine's stomach. Her own kin had ordered the massacre. And now, Veyrek, once her lover, had become the most hunted Apache leader in the territory. Before she could speak again, Mara Quinn returned with towels, her face stiff with unease. She handed them to Seraphine, not to Veyrek. I've set some stew to warm, Mara said shortly. It'll be ready soon. She paused, eyes darting between them. Will he be staying? Seraphine glanced at Veyrek, uncertain herself. I'll be gone before first light, he said, his voice steady. Too risky to linger. When Mara left, Seraphine led him to the fire. She helped him pull off his wet buckskins, her breath catching at the sight of his chest, marked now with new scars, signs of a life lived under fire. "I thought of you every full moon," she whispered, drying his long hair with slow care. "Just like you told me to." "I felt you," he said. "Your thoughts kept me alive when the canyon closed in, when fever gripped me, when my dead called me home." She froze. "You nearly crossed over?" "More than once." He took her hands in his. "But I swore I'd come back. Not even death could take me till I kept that promise." Her voice trembled. "And now that you're here, what happens?" Veyrek's eyes locked with hers. "I have a place," he said. "Up in the high ridges. White men don't go there. A valley with clean water, plenty of game. I built a lodge there. For you, if you'll come." Seraphine blinked. "You want me to leave everything and go with you? Tonight?" "Soon," he said, glancing to the rain-lashed window. "Not tonight. Storm hides my trail. But even in rain, the Black Spur cavalry ride the roads. We'll need to plan." Her thoughts spun. If she left, she'd be walking away from the ranch, the life she'd fought to build, her name, her place in society. But if she stayed— "I don't have much choice anymore," she admitted. "My father's issued an ultimatum. Marry Captain Ashcroft or return to Fort Union by month's end. If I refuse, he'll send soldiers to drag me back." Veyrek's jaw tightened. "Then time's not on our side." Their conversation halted as Mara returned with a tray, bowls of hot stew, fresh baked bread. She set them down silently and exited just as fast, her disapproval loud in every step. "She fears me," Veyrek noted. "She fears for me," Seraphine corrected softly. "Mara's been with me since I was a child. She's like family." "Would she betray us to your father?" Seraphine paused, thinking. "No, she's loyal, but she'll try to talk me out of this." "Is she wrong to?" he asked quietly. "A colonel's daughter? And an Apache warrior?" Seraphine reached across the table, taking his scarred hand. "If it's madness, then it's the only madness I've ever wanted, and I've lived with it for 5 long years. Every decent man who came knockin' left with a polite smile and an empty heart, because none of them were him." They ate in easy silence, the warmth of the kitchen softening 5 long years of distance like snow melt under the morning sun. Seraphine studied Veyrek's face, noting the new weathered lines near his eyes, the heaviness in his gaze. He'd changed, so had she, but whatever tied their hearts together hadn't loosened one bit. After supper, Seraphine led him through the ranch house, showing him how she'd turned her uncle's crumbling homestead into a thriving operation. Veyrek listened close, asking about her decisions, nodding with quiet admiration. "You've become a true leader," he said. "If you'd been born among my people, they would have held you in great esteem." Seraphine turned, holding his gaze. "And now? Would your people accept me, if I went with you?" Veyrek's expression grew somber. "I have no people anymore. Those who followed me as broken knife, they're scattered. Many are gone." "Then, who lives in that valley you spoke of?" "No one. It's a place I found while hunting, far from Ash River lands, far from white men's reach. It's wild, untouched. Somewhere we could start over." He took her hands gently in his. "But you must understand, there's no fine house waiting there. No servants, no comforts, just what we build with our own hands." Seraphine didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of hard living. I've survived more than most out here." That brought a rare smile to Veyrek's face, one that lit up his features. "Yes, Colonel's daughter has turned into a frontier woman." The smile faded just as quick. "But danger still walks near us. Your father won't let go easy, and there are those among both the Black Spur Cavalry and the Apache who would hunt us down if they knew what we were planning." "Then we'll move carefully," Seraphine said. "I've saved enough money to buy what we need. Supplies, mounts, freedom. We could be gone before my father's deadline ever arrives." They spoke deep into the night, laying out their plan to disappear into the mountains and build something of their own. Veyrek would leave at dawn to scout the safest trail. He'd return in 3 days. Meanwhile, Seraphine would liquidate what she could, pack only the bare essentials, and quietly prepare the Holt ranch for her absence, leaving it in the hands of Thomas Reyes. At first light, Veyrek rose. The storm had cleared, leaving the world scrubbed and still, scented with wet earth, sage and pine. 3 days, he said as they stood on the porch, the wind whispering around them. "When the moon's a quarter full," Seraphine answered, her voice thick with emotion. Even this short goodbye felt too heavy to bear now that he'd returned. Veyrek cradled her face between his rough hands, eyes memorizing every detail. "For 5 years I carried your face inside me. 3 more days is nothing." Then he kissed her, long and deep, the kind of kiss that held all the ache of the years they'd lost, and the hope of what still lay ahead. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heart. "Be careful," she whispered. "Always," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her brow. Then he turned and slipped into the pale light, silent as shadow, gone before she could call him back. Seraphine stood there until he vanished into the cottonwoods, the turquoise pendant he'd once given her still warm against her skin. 3 days. That's all that stood between her and the life she truly wanted. The next 2 days, she worked with purpose. She rode into Santa Fe and withdrew her savings, turning most into coin and gold, packed neatly into a small leather pouch. She sent word to her business contacts, explaining she'd be traveling for an extended time and that Thomas Reyes would oversee operations. All the while, Mara Quinn kept a watchful eye. She said nothing, but the silence was taut with unease. By the afternoon of the second day, as Seraphine packed riding clothes into a saddlebag, Mara couldn't hold her tongue any longer. "Miss Holt," she said from the doorway, her arms crossed. "I need to speak plain." Seraphine didn't stop folding. "I've made up my mind, Mara. To run off with an Apache warrior, a man your father's men have been trying to kill for years?" She stepped inside, voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Do you understand what this'll do to your name? To everything you've built?" "I don't give a damn about what people say," Seraphine said firmly. "The ranch will carry on under Thomas. And your father?" Mara's voice wavered. "You think Colton Holt will sit quiet when he finds out his daughter's gone off with broken knife?" Her eyes shimmered with tears. "He'll chase you to the ends of the frontier, girl." Seraphine turned slowly, facing the woman who'd been like a second mother to her. "I know you're trying to protect me, Mara, but I've waited 5 years for Veyrek. I love him." Mara scoffed, eyes full of pain. "Love? What do you know of love from 3 days under a waterfall 5 years ago? This ain't one of your storybooks, Seraphine. This is the real world. Folks don't forget." "You think I don't know that?" Seraphine's voice cracked, anger, grief, and certainty all in one. "I've worked day and night to build this ranch. I've stood tall while every suitor my father lined up saw me as nothing more than the colonel's obedient daughter. But Veyrek, he sees me, the real me." Mara turned away, shaking her head, sorrow in every step. "And where's this great love supposed to take you?" Mara Quinn's voice was low, tight. "To some god-forsaken valley, living like savages? No doctor, no medicine, no safety? You'd throw everything away for that?" "We're not throwing anything away," Seraphine Holt said firmly, folding a blanket into her saddlebag. We're building something new, a life that's ours. No judgment, no chains, just us. Mara shook her head, voice dropping to something softer, something heavier. You really believe that? She stepped closer. The world doesn't just let folks disappear and start over, especially not folks like you and Veyrek. Seraphine didn't answer. She turned back to her packing, her movements brisk, defiant. My mind's made up. I leave with him tomorrow night. She paused. You can accept it or not, Mara, but I won't be talked out of this. Silence hung in the room like a brewing storm. For a moment, Seraphine thought Mara had left, but then came the voice, soft, strained. I've watched over you since you were barely tall enough to reach the table. I swore to your mother I'd protect you. Don't ask me to stand here and watch you walk into ruin. Seraphine set down the coat she'd been folding. She crossed the room and took Mara's hands weathered by years of work and worry. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm finally claiming it. Her voice cracked, but her eyes were fierce. On my terms. Can't you see that? Mara looked long into her face, as if searching for the girl she once raised. But all she found was a woman who would not be moved. I see it, she whispered at last, and I pray to heaven it don't lead you to sorrow. She squeezed Seraphine's hands once, then stepped back with a heavy breath. I'll make supper special tonight. If it's to be our last meal together. Her voice trailed off. Seraphine watched her go, guilt blooming deep in her chest. Mara wasn't just a housekeeper. She was the closest thing to a mother Seraphine had left. Leaving her behind wouldn't be easy. But the path ahead had already been chosen, and it led into the mountains. The next morning broke clear and blue, the kind of day where you swear the sky itself could carry you away. Seraphine woke before the sun crested the Sangre de Cristo peaks. Her heart drummed steady with anticipation. By this time tomorrow, she'd be riding beside Veyrek, far beyond the reach of Fort Union, beyond the weight of her father's name. She spent the early hours wrapping up affairs, riding the pasture lines, giving orders with calm precision. Thomas Reyes took it all in stride. He never questioned her sudden decision to leave for an extended journey. If he suspected anything, he didn't let on. Rotate the north pasture within the week, she said, reins in hand. And that young mare by the windmill, she's favoring her back leg again. I'll see to it, Miss Holt, Thomas replied. We'll keep things running till you return. Seraphine felt a pang of guilt. Thomas had been her right hand these past years, helping turn a crumbling estate into a ranch worth respect. She'd drawn up papers giving him full authority while she was gone, and a fallback plan if she never came back. It was all she could offer, without revealing the truth. As the sun climbed higher, a dust cloud rose on the horizon, riders approaching. Seraphine narrowed her eyes, scanning the trail. It wasn't Veyrek. Too early, and too many. 6 riders. Steady pace. No urgency. Just confidence. And then her stomach dropped. Captain Rhett Ashcroft. He rode in like he still owned the place, flanked by 5 soldiers from the Black Spur Cavalry. Miss Holt, he greeted, swinging down from his saddle with all the polished charm of a man used to getting his way. Hope we find you well. Seraphine didn't flinch. Captain Ashcroft, can't say I expected you today. He removed his hat, his tone formal. Your father grew concerned. Said you never answered his last letter. He sent me to check on you and offer escort back to Fort Union. As you can see, I'm in one piece, Seraphine said coolly, and I haven't made a decision yet. Ashcroft gave a slight nod, but then he stepped closer, voice dropping. Seraphine, your father's patience is thin. The deadline's near, and we've had increased sightings of Ash River riders near these parts. She met his gaze, steel in her voice. The only danger here is a man who wants to control a daughter like she's property. You have until the end of the month, she added, and I'll use every hour. Ashcroft studied her face. There's something off about you today. You seem tense. Seraphine forced a polite smile. Running a ranch doesn't leave much room for idle hands, Captain. He didn't buy it. She could see it in his eyes. Still, he smiled thinly. We've been riding since dawn. Might we trouble you for a meal before heading back? She wanted to say no. Wanted to send them back down the road, dust and all. But refusing would stir questions she couldn't afford. Not today. Not with nightfall fast approaching, and Veyrek on his way. Certainly. Mara will prepare something, Seraphine said, voice steady. Make yourselves comfortable. As the soldiers dismounted and led their horses to the watering trough, Seraphine hurried into the house, boots scraping the porch wood. Inside, she found Mara Quinn already bustling about the kitchen, hands moving fast, her face unreadable. Did you know they were coming? Seraphine hissed under her breath. Mara didn't look up. How would I know the captain's business? Look at me, Mara. Seraphine's voice was sharper now, accusing. Mara finally met her gaze, eyes tight with something between guilt and resolve. I did what I had to do to protect you, child. The words hit Seraphine like a slap. You sent for my father? Mara gave a slow nod. I wrote him. Told him I feared you were headed for ruin. Seraphine's voice cracked with disbelief. After everything? After I trusted you? I didn't say his name, Mara said quickly. I never mentioned Veyrek. Just said you might leave the ranch. Maybe with someone dangerous. Seraphine's hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. You don't understand. If Captain Ashcroft's men are here when Veyrek arrives, they'll kill him without question. Mara's voice softened. Maybe that's for the best. Before he spirits you off to some mountain hollow where no one can find you, how dare you? Seraphine snapped. You had no right. Just then, the kitchen door creaked open. Captain Rhett Ashcroft stepped in, removing his hat. Pardon the intrusion, he said, his drawl smooth. Might I have a word with you in private, Miss Holt? Seraphine squared her shoulders and forced a calm nod. Of course, Captain. Let's step into my study. Inside the small office, Ashcroft's tone shifted, more personal, more pressing. I'm not just here on your father's orders, he said, pacing slowly. I'm worried about you. He stopped near the window. There've been sightings, rumors of Ash River scouts near this land. Seraphine kept her face still. Rumors are part of frontier life, Captain. I've seen no Apache on my ranch. Ashcroft studied her closely. You're sure? Nothing out of the ordinary? Quite sure, she replied smoothly. My crew rides the perimeter daily. They'd report anything suspicious. Ashcroft stepped closer, his voice gentler. If there's trouble, you can tell me. Whatever it is, I can help. For the briefest moment, Seraphine faltered. Ashcroft wasn't heartless. He'd always treated her with respect, maybe even more than that. But he was a soldier, her father's man, bound by oath to hunt Apache rebels, especially one like Broken Knife. She looked him dead in the eye. There's nothing to tell, Rhett. I appreciate your concern, but it's misplaced. Shall we return to the others? Ashcroft hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. As you wish. During the meal, Seraphine wore her calm like armor, offering polite smiles, speaking of ranch upkeep and weather while her mind spiraled. Ashcroft wasn't leaving. The soldiers lounged beneath the cottonwoods, chewing jerky, sipping water, laughing like they meant to stay a while. As evening crept in, Seraphine's heart beat faster with every passing shadow. Veyrek would arrive by nightfall, unaware the ranch was crawling with enemies. She had to warn him. But how? If she slipped out, Ashcroft would suspect. And she couldn't send one of the Holt ranch crew. Too risky. The soldiers would question anyone unfamiliar. Then Ashcroft rose from his seat and made his announcement. "We'll be staying the night. Colonel's orders. Said to keep you safe till you decide." Seraphine stood quickly. "That's not necessary. The ranch is secure." Ashcroft's jaw tightened. "Still, we'll camp in the yard. With your permission, I'll take the guest room." The truth settled in her gut like a stone. Her father had predicted her defiance. Ashcroft wasn't here to check in. He was here to block her escape. "Very well," she said tightly. "Mara will ready the room." Darkness wrapped the ranch like a shroud. Seraphine retreated to her bedroom, not to sleep, but to act. She slipped out of her dress and into dark riding clothes, packed a saddlebag, just essentials, blew out her lamp and crept to the window. 2 soldiers stood sentry in the yard, others bedded near the barn. Ashcroft was across the hall now, in the guest room. The house was quiet. Only the soft creak of floorboards as Mara moved about her chores. Seraphine's room faced west, toward the Sangre de Cristos, toward the path Veyrek would ride. She pressed her palm to the glass. The moon had just passed its first quarter, casting pale silver over the land. Shadows pooled deep beneath the trees. If he was coming, he'd be close now. And if she didn't find a way to warn him, he'd walk straight into a trap. A soft knock stirred Seraphine from her thoughts. "Miss Holt?" came a hushed voice from the hallway. "Are you awake?" It was Mara Quinn. Seraphine hesitated, still raw from the betrayal, but stepped to the door and cracked it open. "What is it?" Mara slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind her. "I've come to help you," she whispered. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "Help me," she echoed, disbelief thick in her voice. "After what you did?" "I never meant for soldiers to take over the ranch," Mara said quickly, voice trembling. "I only wanted your father to bring you to your senses." Her hands wrung together. "But seeing you today, how sure you are of what you want. I know now I was wrong. Your happiness matters more than my fears." Seraphine studied her, really looked. The woman who had raised her, fed her, wiped her tears as a child. Now she looked remorseful, aged by guilt. "Why should I trust you?" she asked coldly. "Because I love you like my own," Mara replied softly, "and because I know a way to get word to your Apache." Seraphine's heart leapt. "How?" "Thomas Reyes," Mara said, lowering her voice even more. "He came to the kitchen after supper, asking strange questions about the captain's plans." Seraphine leaned in. "Go on." "At first I thought he was just making conversation, but then I caught him glancing at the mountains, like he was listening for something." Mara took a breath. "He knows, doesn't he, about Veyrek?" Seraphine hesitated, then gave a single nod. "They've crossed paths before, during hunts. They don't speak much, but there's a quiet understanding between them." Mara nodded. "Thomas is waiting now, near the old cottonwood by the south pasture. He can take a message. Warn your warrior before he rides into danger." Hope surged through Seraphine. "Will you take a note to him? The soldiers won't question your movements." "Already written," Mara said, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. "But it needs something personal, something he'll know came from you." Seraphine reached for the turquoise pendant at her throat. Without a second thought, she slipped it off the leather cord and pressed it into Mara's hand. "Give him this. He'll understand." Mara's fingers closed around it, her eyes brimming. "I'm sorry, child. I thought I was protecting you. But it was me I was trying to protect. I couldn't bear to lose you." Seraphine stepped forward and embraced the woman who had mothered her for so long. I understand, she whispered. But I have to follow my heart, Mara. And I'll help you do just that, Mara promised, wiping her cheeks. She tucked the note and stone into her apron pocket. I'll tell Thomas to warn your Apache to stay hidden until tomorrow night. By then, I'll have slipped a sleeping tonic into the captain's tea. Seraphine blinked. Mara. It's not dangerous, Mara reassured her. Just enough to put him out good and deep. I've learned a few tricks out here on the frontier. With one last squeeze of Seraphine's hand, she vanished from the room like a ghost. Seraphine returned to the window. Her heart felt lighter despite the storm circling her. If Thomas made it in time, if Veyrek could stay clear of the Black Spur cavalry, if the plan held, then by this time tomorrow, they'd be free. Her eyes caught motion in the shadows. Someone slipping through the cottonwoods. Thomas, moving steady and sure, heading toward the dark line of trees where hope waited. She held her breath as he vanished, carrying everything she dared to dream. The next day dragged like rusted spurs. Seraphine played her part, riding the land, reviewing ledgers, directing the Holt ranch crew like it was any other day. But Captain Rhett Ashcroft never left her side. He shadowed her like a second son, smiling, polite, but always watching. As they rode past the cattle herd, he spoke. You've done well, Miss Holt. The ranch has thrived under your care. Few men would have been given the chance, she replied, but women are capable of far more than folks like to admit. Ashcroft chuckled, tipping his hat. That's one of the things I admire most about you. There was sincerity in his words, and it pained Seraphine. Rhett Ashcroft wasn't the villain. He was a soldier bound to duty, a man who might have loved her in another life, but her heart belonged to another, claimed beneath the hush of a waterfall 5 years ago. She turned her horse toward the ranch house. Captain, she said, voice even, I've made my decision about my father's offer. Ashcroft's brows rose. I'm listening. I need just one more day, Seraphine Holt said carefully. By tomorrow morning I'll have everything settled and be ready to ride for Fort Union with you and your men. Captain Rhett Ashcroft studied her face, searching for any hint of deceit. You'll return willingly? What changed your mind? Seraphine had anticipated the question. Your presence here reminded me how deeply my father fears for my safety. I may not agree with his ways, but I understand why he acts as he does. She met his gaze squarely. I'd rather speak with him face to face than keep this tension going. Ashcroft was quiet a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he softened. I'm glad to hear it. Your father will be relieved. He paused. And about the other matter? My proposal? Seraphine couldn't offer him false comfort. One decision at a time, Captain. First, I speak with my father. Ashcroft nodded, hiding his disappointment behind a gentleman's courtesy. Of course, we'll leave at first light. As they rode back to the ranch house, Seraphine caught a glimpse of Mara Quinn on the porch. Her face revealed nothing, but their eyes met. And in that brief exchange, Seraphine knew the plan was still on track. All through the day, she went about her business with quiet precision, making preparations without drawing attention. She visited the safe in her study, slipping a pouch of gold into the lining of her riding coat. She penned farewell letters to business partners to be sent after she vanished. She took time in the stables, murmuring soft goodbyes to each of her favorite horses. Evening crept in, slow as molasses. Supper passed under a veil of tension. Ashcroft made polite conversation. Seraphine responded with just enough charm. Mara served with her usual grace, betraying not a flicker of what was to come. When dessert was cleared, Mara returned with a tea tray. A special blend, she told Ashcroft with a pleasant smile. Should help you sleep soundly after so many long days in the saddle. Ashcroft took the cup with a grateful nod. "That's mighty kind of you, Mrs. Quinn." Seraphine watched, heart ticking like a drum as he drank. He commented on the odd flavor. Unfamiliar, but pleasant. Within 30 minutes, his eyelids sagged. His speech slowed. "Perhaps I'll turn in early," he muttered through a yawn. "Tomorrow will be a long ride." "Of course," Seraphine said, standing as he did. "I'll see you in the morning, Captain." He shuffled toward the guest room, his steps heavy. Seraphine looked to Mara, who gave her a small, firm nod. The sleeping draft was working. Seraphine hurried upstairs. She stripped out of her dress and changed into travel clothes. Sturdy trousers beneath a riding skirt, a lined coat, leather boots. She braided her hair back tight and fastened the small satchel that held her essentials. Now, all she needed was Veyrek's signal. Near midnight, seated at her window beneath the silver moon, she heard it. A deep, drawn-out call, an owl's cry, but not quite natural. It was him. Her pulse leapt. She stood, took one last glance at the room where she'd spent the last 5 years, and slipped silently into the hallway. Outside Ashcroft's door, she paused. His deep breathing confirmed he was out cold. Downstairs, Mara waited in the kitchen with a wrapped bundle and tear-filled eyes. "Thomas has the horses ready behind the orchard," she whispered, handing over the food. "2 of the soldiers are asleep. The other 3 are posted near the main gate." Seraphine embraced the woman tightly. "Thank you. For everything." "Be happy, child," Mara said, her voice breaking. "And if you can, send word, someday, that you're safe." "I will," Seraphine promised, though both knew it might never be possible. With one last squeeze of Mara's hand, she slipped out into the cold, moonlit yard. She hugged the shadows, moving low and fast between buildings, eyes always scanning for movement. She had nearly reached the orchard when a voice snapped through the night. "Who goes there?" Seraphine froze against the bark of an old apple tree. A soldier stepped closer, rifle raised. "Show yourself." For one dreadful heartbeat, she thought she'd been caught. Then, crash. Glass shattered near the barn. A ruckus broke out. "Check the barn!" the soldier barked, turning towards the noise. "Might be an Apache." As the patrol ran toward the commotion, Seraphine bolted, slipping through the trees toward the orchard's edge. Just beyond, Thomas Reyes waited in the darkness with 2 saddled horses. "Hurry, Miss Holt," he urged, lifting her into the saddle. "That distraction won't last." Seraphine gripped the reins and looked him dead in the eye. "Thank you, Thomas, for everything." Then she turned toward the hills, toward freedom, and the man who'd once claimed her heart by a waterfall, and who had come back to claim it again. The ranch foreman gave a slow, solemn nod. "Ride safe, Miss Holt. Your Apache's waiting, by the lightning-struck pine, east pasture." Seraphine paused, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. "The ranch will be looked after?" "It's in good hands," Thomas Reyes assured her firmly. "You gave your orders. Now ride. Fast." Seraphine turned her horse towards the east pasture, keeping her pace steady until the orchard faded behind her. Somewhere back near the barn, angry shouts rang out. The soldiers had found the broken lantern, the diversion, and soon they'd realized she was gone. Once she cleared the trees, Seraphine leaned low and kicked her horse into a gallop, tearing across the moonlit pasture. The night air stung her cheeks, laced with the sharp scent of sage and distant pine, the wild breath of freedom itself. There, just ahead, stood the blasted pine tree, its jagged frame silhouetted against a sky full of stars. From the shadows emerged a figure, mounted, rifle across his saddle. It was Veyrek. She slowed her horse as she approached. He sat tall and silent atop a paint horse, his voice deep and familiar as thunder rolling off distant cliffs. "Seraphine." "Veyrek," she breathed, heart pounding, not just from the ride. He extended a hand, opening his palm to reveal the turquoise stone she had once tied around his neck. "Your message reached me. Thomas is a good man." She nodded and quickly retied the stone around her neck. "We've got to move. They'll know I'm gone by now." As if her words summoned it, a shout echoed from the direction of the ranch, followed by the hard drum of hooves. "This way," Veyrek said sharply, already turning towards the mountains. "I know paths they can't follow." They rode hard into the dark, climbing steep switchbacks, cutting through tight canyons. Veyrek led them along cliffside trails that clung to rock like veins, across rushing streams and beneath branches heavy with snowmelt. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded, until even the wind swallowed them whole. By the time dawn found them high in the mountains, their horses were lathered but unbroken. They paused by a spring. The water ran clear, cold as glass. As the horses drank, they chewed strips of jerky from Seraphine's satchel. "Your father's men have lost us for now," Veyrek said between bites. "But he'll send more, better trackers." Seraphine flexed sore muscles and glanced toward the horizon. "How far to that valley you spoke of?" 2 days, Veyrek replied. "Through land few white men ever dare to enter." She turned her eyes towards the jagged ridgelines, the deep valleys blanketed in pine and snow. Far beyond, she could just make out the faint edge of the plains where Fort Union rested, where her old life still tried to claim her. But up here, with the sky so wide and the world so raw, those rules felt like dust in the wind. "I don't care how hard the journey is," she said, turning to him. "Not if I'm with you." Veyrek's stern expression softened. He reached for her face, fingers rough and reverent against her jaw. "I dreamed of this moment for 5 long years, bringing Seraphine Holt into my mountain home." He swallowed hard. "But dreams don't do justice to the real woman." She leaned into his touch. "Is the real thing a letdown?" He smiled. "No. You're stronger, more beautiful, than I ever dared to dream." Then he kissed her. It was no gentle thing, but deep and aching and full of everything they'd held back for half a decade. Seraphine's hands gripped his shoulders tight, grounding herself, daring to believe this wasn't a ghost. When they finally broke apart, Veyrek rested his brow against hers. "We should keep moving. Still many miles till night." They rode until the sun hung low. Veyrek taught her how to read deer trails, how to spot water where the ground looked dry, how to tell direction by the shape of the trees. In turn, Seraphine told him about the ranch, the years she fought to keep it afloat, the times society tried to push her aside, and how she stood her ground anyway. As twilight settled, they made camp in a quiet hollow. Veyrek built a near-invisible fire from dry pine needles and old wood. Seraphine unsaddled the horses and brushed them down with quiet care. There was no awkwardness, no fumbling. They moved in sync, like partners who'd ridden trails together for years, even if time had kept them apart. After a humble meal, they lay under a tapestry of stars so bright it almost hurt the eyes. Seraphine curled into Veyrek's arms, her head on his chest, listening to the slow, steady rhythm of a man who had crossed miles of danger just to keep his word. "Tomorrow we ride deeper," Veyrek murmured near her ear. "Even Ash River clan rarely travels those paths. Old spirits watch those lands." "Friendly spirits?" she asked, half teasing. But his voice was serious. "To those who come with respect and good hearts." He pulled her closer. "Sleep. Morning rises fast in the mountains." And so, beneath the hush of pine boughs, Wrapped in his warmth and the hush of wilderness, Seraphine finally slept without fear. For the first time in 5 years, Seraphine Holt slept soundly. No turquoise stone clutched in her hand, no silent wishes cast into the dark. She didn't need them anymore. The man she had waited for, Veyrek, was finally here. Real, solid, hers. Their journey resumed at first light. They traveled through breathtaking wilderness, lush ridges, narrow cliffside trails, and ancient forests so old the trees seemed to murmur stories from centuries past. They crossed streams swift with snowmelt, climbed ledges no wagon could scale, and rode beneath pines that clawed at the sky. By late afternoon, they reached a high ridge. Seraphine gasped as she looked down upon the valley below, cradled between jagged peaks, a hidden paradise unfurled. Verdant meadows stretched like a painter's dream. A crystal lake glimmered at the center, its surface mirroring the snow-tipped mountains above. Aspen and pine trees circled the water like guardians. It felt untouched by time. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Veyrek's voice carried both pride and reverence. "This is the place I promised, the Valley of Hidden Waters. The Old One spoke of it, but few have ever found it. How did you find it?" she asked, still in awe as they began their descent into the valley. His gaze darkened. "After the massacre of my band, I wandered, many moons, half dead, searching for a place where the white man would not follow. I was wounded, ready to cross into the spirit world." He paused. "But the spirits didn't call me home. They led me here, to heal, to wait, for you." As they rode into the heart of the valley, Seraphine saw signs of his hope made real. A sturdy lodge, built in part from stone and timber, stood tucked in a grove near the water's edge. It was neither entirely Apache nor fully settler in design, but something in between, their own style. Nearby, a small corral held a few horses. Fresh-tilled earth showed the beginnings of a garden, already green with life. "You built all of this?" she asked, overwhelmed. Veyrek nodded. "For us, a home where no one cares what blood we carry, where we live by our own rules and follow our own hearts." Seraphine dismounted, hands trembling with emotion. 5 years ago, by a waterfall, Veyrek had made a promise, to return, to build a life beyond the hatred of their two worlds, and against every odd, he had kept it. He came to stand beside her. "Welcome home, Seraphine Holt." She turned to him, tears tracing down her cheeks. "I never stopped believing in you, even when everyone called me a fool. Even when they said I should marry another, I knew you'd come back." Veyrek took her hands in his. "And I knew you'd be waiting, even when I was hunted, even when death brushed close, I held on, for this." As the sun dipped low, bathing the valley in golden light, they stood together at the edge of their new beginning. A life no one had given them. They had fought for it. 3 months later, the first snow of winter powdered the peaks around the Valley of Hidden Waters. Inside the warm lodge, Seraphine stoked the fire while Veyrek sliced strips of venison for the evening meal. Their days had settled into a rhythm, simple, honest, and shared. Seraphine had taken to mountain life with surprising ease. Years running Holt Ranch had made her strong, practical, and unafraid of hard labor. What she didn't know? Veyrek taught. How to trap, how to track deer by moonlight, how to spot storm signs in the sky. Together they'd expanded the garden, dried meat and herbs for winter, and added handmade furniture carved from pine and cedar. Veyrek glanced up at the smoke hole above. "Storm's coming." "Big one," Seraphine agreed. "Good thing we finished reinforcing that north wall yesterday." He smiled at her, nodding with approval. You've become a true mountain woman, Seraphine Holt. She chuckled. And you've turned into quite the builder. That root cellar of yours will keep us fed through spring. They cooked side by side, movements fluid from months of working together. Over supper, she found her thoughts drifting back to the life they'd left behind. Do you ever wonder what happened after we left? She asked softly. If my father sent more soldiers to find us? Veyrek stirred the fire. For a time, maybe, but these mountains guard their secrets well. Even the best trackers lose the trail in these passes. Seraphine thought of Colton Holt, of Rhett Ashcroft, of Mara Quinn and Thomas Reyes. She had written letters before they left, explaining her choice, without revealing where they were going. Sometimes she ached at the worry she must have caused, but never once had she regretted her decision. Thomas promised to send word if things got bad at the ranch, she said. We haven't heard anything. I take that as a good sign. Veyrek set down his empty bowl. Spring will come, and with it, maybe we ride out to the trading post, hear word of the world below. The thought stirred something in Seraphine, excitement, and a twinge of fear. Their valley was isolated, but not completely cut off. Now and then, Veyrek made the journey to a small trading post 2 days' ride away, trading furs and handmade goods for coffee, salt, thread, and other things they couldn't make themselves. So far, Seraphine had stayed behind. But the idea of stepping back into the world, even just for a moment, lingered like the wind curling through the trees. I think I'd like that, Seraphine Holt said softly, her fingers brushing Veyrek's. Though I've grown to love the quiet of this place. As have I, Veyrek replied, easing down beside her. Never imagined a warrior like me, born into battle, could ever know peace. But here, with you, peace found me. She leaned into his shoulder, warmth blooming in her chest. Outside, snow fell steady, cloaking the hidden valley in a blanket of white. Inside, firelight danced on the lodge walls, casting golden shadows around them. Do you ever regret it? Veyrek asked quietly. Leaving everything behind? Seraphine took a moment. She'd walked away from her ranch, her name, her place in society. The world she once ruled with confidence had turned its back on her. And she on it. Her reputation? Likely ruined. Whispers and scandal clung to her name, no doubt. But she didn't flinch. No, she said at last, her voice firm. I found something here worth more than anything I gave up. What's that? Veyrek asked, his tone unusually soft. She turned to him, lacing her fingers with his scarred hands. Freedom. The kind that lets me live by my own truth, not by the rules of others. And love. The kind that crosses every line drawn by the world. Veyrek's gaze held hers, unreadable no longer. Among the Ash River clan, we don't say love with words the way white folks do. We show it, in the hunt, in the firewood split, in the silence we share. He hesitated. But for Seraphine Holt, I'll say it. I love you. Like the mountains love the sky, unshifting, forever. She choked on a breath. And I love you. With every breath in my body, every beat of this heart. Outside, the blizzard howled, but inside that kiss, long, fierce, tender, wrapped their world in something far warmer than fire. In this secret corner of the world, they had what few souls ever dared dream of. Love without walls. 1 year later. The summer sun filtered through aspen branches, casting golden patterns across the garden floor where Seraphine knelt, dirt on her hands, joy on her face. She weeded and checked the early vegetables, humming softly. A cradle, hand-carved from bent willow, swayed gently nearby, a sleeping bundle nestled within. She paused, wiping sweat from her brow, and glanced at the cradle. Her daughter, little Ilara. Just 3 months old and already the heart of this hidden valley. She had Seraphine's golden hair and her father's fierce, dark eyes. Then came the sound. Hooves on dirt. Seraphine turned. Veyrek rode in from the tree line, a deer slung across his horse's back. His expression, always stoic, melted into a rare smile when he saw her and the baby. "Successful hunt?" she called, rising. "Very," he said, dismounting and securing the reins. He walked to the cradle, knelt, and smiled down at Ilara. "She grows stronger each day," he said. "Like her father," Seraphine murmured, joining him. Veyrek reached for the turquoise stone around the baby's neck, the very one he'd gifted Seraphine 6 years ago by the waterfall. "She is guarded," he said. "As you were." Just then, a different sound tore through the stillness. Another rider. Not from the hunting path, but from the trail that led to the outside world. They shared a look. "Take Ilara inside," Veyrek said, his voice low, hand sliding to the knife on his belt. "I'll see who it is." Heart pounding, Seraphine swept up her child and slipped into the lodge, watching through the window as Veyrek planted himself between their home and the intruder. One rider. Exhausted horse. Then, recognition bloomed in her eyes. "Miguel!" she cried, stepping out, Ilara still cradled in her arms. "It's Miguel!" The man slumped forward on his mount. Dusty, weathered, desperate, but familiar. "Miss Holt, gracias a Dios I found you," Miguel gasped as he dismounted. Veyrek eased his stance but didn't lower his guard. Miguel's eyes fell to the baby, widening with awe. Seraphine stepped forward. "Miguel, how did you find us?" "I followed a trader," he said breathlessly. "Said he'd done business with a lone Apache deep in the mountains. I had to be sure." He took a shaky breath. "No time for details. I came with a warning. Colonel Holt is coming. He has soldiers. They're sweeping the mountains, canyon by canyon." Seraphine went pale. "My father—" Miguel nodded grimly. "Captain Ashcroft never believed you left by choice." Miguel had asked questions for days, following every lead. Finally, a trader in Santa Fe spoke of a dark-haired man wearing turquoise, bartering fine pelts. When he told them, Veyrek's jaw tightened. "How close?" "3 days out, maybe less," Thomas Reyes replied. "They've got high-ridge trackers with them, best in these parts." Seraphine drew Ilara closer, arms tightening protectively. They'd carved out a quiet life here in the mountains, a real family. Now her father's ghost, his obsession, was closing in. "We have to go," Veyrek said, voice firm. "Someplace further, away from the settlers." "But this is our home," Seraphine whispered, looking around at the hand-built lodge, the garden they'd grown, the trails Ilara had taken her first steps on. Veyrek's voice softened. "Home's not the valley. It's us, as long as we're together." Thomas hesitated, shifting in the saddle. "There's more. The ranch, it's thriving." "I did as you asked," he added, pulling a folded deed from his bag. "Before I came, a lawyer in Santa Fe helped transfer ownership. The land is now under a holding company, with you as silent owner." Seraphine's hands trembled as she unfolded it. "You could go back," Thomas said. "Claim it legally. Not even Colonel Holt could contest that. He's still at Fort Union, but times have changed. You've got allies now." She looked to Veyrek. Years of love passed between them in a single glance. "What does Seraphine Holt want?" he asked. "Mountain woods or Plains Ranch?" She looked down at Ilara, then to her husband. "Neither," she said softly. "I want us safe. Together. That's all that matters." Veyrek nodded. "Then we choose," not from fear, but with strength. That night, they spoke long after the fire had died to coals. They could vanish deeper into the mountains, or return to fight for the ranch, or carve out a new way. By dawn, the choice was made. "We don't run," Veyrek said as they ate breakfast with Thomas. "But we won't give up what we've built here." "What about the Black Spur Cavalry?" Thomas warned. "They'll meet truth, not fear," Seraphine said calmly. "My father believes I was taken. It's time he sees the truth." They hatched a bold plan. Thomas would return, say he'd found her, ask for a peaceful approach. She would be waiting. Calm, visible, unmistakably willing. Veyrek would watch, hidden, bow and rifle ready if things turned. "It's a gamble," Veyrek said quietly. "Your father sees me, sees our daughter. It may enrage him." "Then we face it," Seraphine replied. "But I won't live in fear. He needs to see I chose this life. And I found happiness he never could give me." 2 days later, dust stirred on the distant ridge. Riders. Veyrek hid in the rocks. Seraphine stood alone in the clearing, Ilara in her arms, heart pounding like a war drum, but her gaze steady. Out from the pines came the riders, Colonel Colton Holt in front, flanked by Captain Rhett Ashcroft and a dozen men. Thomas rode beside them, jaw clenched. Colton reined in hard when he saw her, standing tall beside a stone lodge, child in arms. "Hannah," he called, stunned. "Hello, father," she said, her voice calm as steel. He dismounted, walking slow, eyes never leaving hers, as though searching for signs of coercion or madness. Red Ashcroft lingered behind, unreadable. Up close, Seraphine saw time had weathered her father's face, lines carved deep, hair now fully gray. For a breath, she saw not the colonel, but the man who once held her hand as a child. "Are you—" he struggled. "Are you well?" "I'm happier than I've ever been," she said plainly. His gaze dropped to the child. "This is your granddaughter," Seraphine said gently. "Her name's Ilara, after mother." Colton's jaw worked. His face, rigid as stone, flickered with something human. Colton Holt's expression was a storm of rage, disbelief, and something deeper, something like grief or regret. "They told me you'd been taken, forced away," he growled, "that the Apache warrior they call Broken Knife kidnapped you." "I left of my own free will," Seraphine Holt said, her voice ringing out strong and clear for every soldier to hear. "I chose this life. I chose him." "Love?" Colton spat the word like it burned his mouth. "What do you know of love? With a savage who—" "Colton," interrupted Captain Rhett Ashcroft, stepping between them. "Look around. Does she seem like a prisoner to you? Does this home strike you as the work of a monster?" The colonel shot him a glare that could kill, but Ashcroft held his ground. "We spent a year chasing shadows and rumors," the captain said. "Maybe it's time we listen to her." Seraphine blinked at Rhett in stunned gratitude before turning to face her father again. "I met Veyrek 6 years ago," she began, "by the waterfall at Santa Fe Creek. We had 3 days, just 3, but it changed everything." She took a breath. "I found something I never believed in, something that shattered every boundary you ever drilled into me. He said he'd come back. And he did." The colonel scoffed. "You mean Broken Knife? The Apache who's led raids, killed soldiers, burned homes?" "I mean the man who lost his people in a cavalry ambush," she said evenly. "The man who built this home from stone and sweat, who grows our food, carves toys for our daughter, and who's loved me with a kind of gentleness I never knew men could carry." A shift in the rocks caught her eye. Movement. Veyrek stepped into view, unarmed, tall and proud on the ridge. The moment stretched taut. Several soldiers raised rifles. "Stand down!" Ashcroft barked. Colton's hand hovered near his revolver. So, Broken Knife dares show his face. "Father, please," Seraphine said. "There's been enough blood, enough hate. Just look around you. We live in peace here. We ask for nothing but to be left alone." Veyrek walked slowly down the slope and stood beside Seraphine, one hand resting near hers, the other near little Ilara. His voice was calm, unwavering. "I am Veyrek of the Ash River clan, once called Broken Knife by your kind. Now, I am her husband, and his father." He nodded toward Ilara, who had just begun to stir, her small hands reaching for the light. Colton stared at him, his face a storm of old prejudice and new confusion. "You expect me to accept this?" he muttered. "To bless this union?" "We seek no blessing," Veyrek replied, "only that you recognize her choice was her own, that she is safe, and that she is loved." Ilara let out a small cry. Seraphine cradled her gently, soothing her back to silence. The baby's dark eyes opened wide, locking onto the strange faces before her. Colton's gaze settled on the child, his granddaughter. Something shifted. "She's got Mary's chin," he said quietly, naming Seraphine's mother, "and her quiet fire." It was just a murmur, but it broke the ice like thunder cracks a frozen creek. Seraphine's voice softened. "Would you like to hold her?" Colton hesitated. Years of war, duty, hatred, it all pressed against the simple human instinct of reaching for kin. At last, his arms opened. Seraphine handed Ilara over, slowly, carefully. The old soldier adjusted his stance to support the baby's tiny weight. Ilara looked at him, curious and calm, then reached out and caught a button on his uniform. Ashcroft stepped forward. "Sir, I believe our mission is complete. She's here by choice. She's safe." Colton didn't reply. Not at first. He was staring at Ilara with a haunted look, as though seeing a ghost from a life that might have been. When he finally raised his eyes to Seraphine, his voice was rough. "You truly chose this life? This man?" "With every part of me," Seraphine said, "and I've never once looked back." Colton handed Ilara back to her mother with trembling care, then adjusted his coat, stiffening back into a soldier's form. "I can't say I understand, and I sure as hell don't approve," he said, "but I see what stands before me." He turned to Veyrek, looked him dead in the eye for the first time. "If either of them is ever harmed, if I so much as hear a whisper of it, there won't be a canyon deep enough to hide you from me." Veyrek dipped his head respectfully. "I wouldn't expect anything less from the father of Seraphine Holt." "We'll be moving out," Colonel Colton Holt announced to his men. Captain Rhett Ashcroft began readying the troops. As the soldiers mounted up, he approached Seraphine one final time. His voice was quiet. "I'm glad you found your peace. Even if it wasn't the life any of us saw coming." "Thank you, Rhett," Seraphine said gently. "Your understanding today, it changed everything." Ashcroft gave a slow nod, eyes heavy with something deeper than words could carry. He had once loved her, and now, in his own silent way, he was setting her free. Before climbing into the saddle, Colonel Holt turned back. "The ranch," he said. "Remains mine," Seraphine answered firmly. "Thomas Reyes has kept it running in my absence. I plan to keep ownership, even if my home is here now." Her father gave a single nod. "Stubborn, just like your mother," he murmured, a faint smile flickering across his weathered face. "Perhaps next time I come down from the fort, you'd let me visit again." Seraphine blinked. "You'd return? To see us?" "To see my granddaughter," he clarified, though his gaze lingered on both her and Veyrek. "A man ought to know his blood, no matter the road taken." It wasn't full acceptance, not yet. But it was something. A crack in the wall of years-old pride. Tears stung Seraphine's eyes. "We'd welcome you, Father." As the Black Spur cavalry rode out, Seraphine, Veyrek, and little Ilara stood watching the trail dust rise and drift away. Thomas Reyes walked up, satisfaction written all over his sun-creased face. "I'll head back to the ranch," he said. "Keep things steady. Maybe come autumn, you pay a visit. See how the herd's grown?" Seraphine looked to Veyrek. He gave a nod. "We'd like that, Thomas," she said. "Thank you for everything." After Thomas left, Seraphine and Veyrek returned to their lodge. They laid Ilara down for her afternoon nap, then stood in the doorway, arms around each other, gazing out over the valley. It was still theirs, still quiet, still free. "Your father, he is proud," Veyrek said, "and he loves you. That's a good place to start." "Do you think he'll ever truly accept us?" she asked, leaning against him. "Time softens all things," he replied. "Even stone yields to the river, if the river flows long enough." Seraphine smiled and wrapped her arms around him. "No matter what comes, we've already won the only fight that mattered. We proved love can span across worlds folks said should stay apart forever." Veyrek brushed a strand of hair from her face, voice low and fierce. "6 years ago, I vowed I'd come back for you. Today, I make a new vow. Our daughter will grow up in a world better than the one we knew, one where both her bloodlines are a source of pride, where she walks tall among all people. We'll build that world," Seraphine promised. "Together." As twilight bathed the valley of hidden waters in blue shadow, they sat on the lodge porch, Ilara asleep between them. Overhead, the stars blinked to life, the same stars that had watched over their first night together, by the waterfall that led Veyrek back to her after 5 long years. Now, they watched over a family. The turquoise stone around Ilara's neck shimmered in the fading light, a mark of both protection and legacy, of 2 bloods joined by love, not war. In this hidden sanctuary, Seraphine Holt had found everything she once thought lost: her freedom, her voice, her purpose, and her family. The daughter of a colonel, the wife of a warrior, the woman who had walked between 2 worlds and built a life no one thought possible. She watched the valley breathe beneath the stars, and knew, without question, she was exactly where she belonged. "Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today." Aviso legal. Disclaimer: our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully, only to support production, while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.